Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vectorworks. We're going to get started by taking a look at the Vectorworks interface, and then we're going to start the process of creating a base file, a file that has tools, preferences, and settings that are all standardized across all of us to start with, just so we're on the same page as we get started with projects for this semester. So to begin with, when you launch Vectorworks, you most likely got a blank document upon startup. That's the Vectorworks default. However, if you're greeted by this sort of like blank gray void looking thing instead, you want to go up to File, New, select Create Blank Document, and set OK. If you're using the educational version of Vectorworks, which most of you probably are, you'll then get this box that says this document is watermarked. This is just a quick little warning dialog box that is letting you know that the file was created with the educational version of Vectorworks. And what that means is that you're going to end up with a non-negotiable watermark at the top and bottom of your page anytime that you print. Other than that, the function of the program isn't altered. If this bugs you, seeing this little dialogue thing, you can say, don't show this dialogue again. Check that. Otherwise, you can just click through and say, okay. So here we are in Vectorworks proper and a blank document. I'm going to zoom out once using my mouse wheel and just doing a little click down. You can see that right here in the center of this workspace area is this gray box. This gray box with this blue grid represents a single piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. This size is changeable. We can change it to different page sizes. We can also have it not show a page boundary at all. We'll take a look at how to do that later on. But just know that this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. To start off with, we want to make sure that we are in the correct workspace. So in Vectorworks, a workspace is a collection of tools and menus that are specifically catered to the type of thing that you're going to be drawing or working with. In our case, we're going to be doing drawings for scenic things and for lighting and for sound. So we want to make sure that our menus and our tool sets are there in order to draw those things. So we're going to go up to Tools, down to Workspaces, and you want to select Spotlight. So your whole space is now going to refresh and change around, and you're now in what's called the Spotlight workspace. This is one that's specifically geared towards live entertainment things. So right up our alley. All the way at the top, looking at interface stuff, we have what you've probably seen in a million different computer programs, which is the menu bar. This contains drop-down menus that give you access to all of the Vectorworks different commands. So you have things that you're probably very used to, right? Like File, where you're going to find things like new files and open and save as and export and print and such. Edit, undo, redo, copy, paste. But you're also going to have other ones that are specific to Vectorworks things, like Model, which is all the 3D modeling commands. Spotlight, which is all the live entertainment objects and lighting specific commands. One I do want to point out to you now is this help menu. So the first option actually says Vectorworks Help. I just want to point out that when you click on that, it actually will launch your web browser and take you to this very robust help feature database that Vectorworks has self-published. Within this, there is a search. If you click on this magnifying glass and you search any topic, you can immediately find a whole bunch of different things and help menus and such for that. It's going to give you a whole bunch of recommendations. You may actually, some of these have video tutorials as well for YouTube links and whatnot. So this is a really helpful, robust thing when you're first learning this program, because this program is pretty in-depth. So this gives you a great resource for when you have questions. You can favorite things. There's a whole glossary of terms and tools and such as well. It's a really helpful thing for when you have questions. Also in that help menu is something that's called What's This? The moment I click on that, my cursor changes to a black arrow and a big question mark next to it. So now actually if I go over and I click on any tool, palette, etc., it's actually going to take me to that section of the help menu as well, this help database. So again, really powerful, helpful thing for when you're first starting out and kind of learning the program. So back to Vectorworks, right below this menu bar, you can see this tab. This is any open document. It presents like tabs in Chrome or something like that. And you can actually see when I hover my mouse over what would be like the plus icon for a new tab, it actually prompts like, do you want to create a new document? So just know and you can click through your different open files and things like that when they're up there, and they'll populate across like tabs. Right below that is what we call the view bar. So the view bar provides quick access to various options that affect the drawing viewing. So you can see right here, we have zoom out. We have different views, like the different isometric views that you started working with hand drawing. Front, rear, back, all that's really great for 3D model making and such. And then we also have things like render modes, which we'll also get into with this course. If you don't have it on already, I highly suggest also that you click this side fly down menu and make sure that layer scale is selected. It just shows you the scale that your page is currently in, that your layer is currently in, and allows you quick access to change those as well. Right below the tool, this view bar is what we call the toolbar. So this displays the various modes available for a selected tool. So in this case, if I click on the rectangle tool, you can see that a whole bunch of different modes populate. If I want a different mode of tool than the one I'm in, I'm just gonna click on that other mode and select it. It'll also give you a brief description for how that particular mode works. So super handy. Modes are going to change based on what tool and everything like that you have open at a given time. Right below the toolbar, and off to the side are rulers, like you see in a lot of different programs. In our case, these rulers are based on our current measurement system. So for us here in Florida and the United States, we're working in the imperial system, which is feet and inches. These rulers will also adjust based on the scale that you're working in. So they'll keep everything into proper scale. So you know, oh, that line I just drew is 5 foot long, just by looking at the rulers. Just really makes it easier to precisely create and place objects. Right here at the center, where 0 and 0 meet, is what we call the origin point. So origin point is the basis for all measurements within Vectorworks. Important thing to note is that any measurements that are up and to the right are going to be considered positive measurements, and anything to the left and down from the origin is going to be considered a negative measurement. That sort of compass direction thing is really important as you get started as well. It just helps you understand when you're creating objects. You have the option when you're creating objects that many times to just set the measurements automatically. So this is a great understanding to have of like, oh, do I need this to be a positive measurement or do I need it to be a negative measurement? Over on the sides, we have what's called palettes. So palettes are ready access tools for drawing and for modifying what we are drawing or have already drawn. The first palette we're going to look at is called the basic tool palette. It provides 2D drawing tools, 2D and 3D drawing modifiers, basic dimensioning, and notation tools. If you hover your mouse over any of these tools that we're going to go over, you see a description for it, and then within parentheses, you'll see what's called the shortcut key or the hotkey for that tool. So you can see that the selection tool or the arrow is shortcut is X. The pan tool shortcut is H. These shortcuts are really great to start memorizing as soon as you can. Working with these shortcut keys speeds up your drafting so much. Instead of, you're drawing down here and then you have to go up and you select the rectangle instead and you keep drawing and then you have to go back and select the selection tool. It just minimizes mouse movement and really can just expedite your drawing process. So start learning those shortcuts. They are changeable if you're really into that like super customizable thing. And I can either myself or Bert would be happy to walk you through what that process is like. The next palette we're going to look at is called tool sets. So tool sets are collections of tools grouped for specific tasks. So in this case, we have a lighting tool set that contains all of the various lighting tools. There's also one that's like dimensions and notes that contains anything that can be useful for dimensioning objects and for making notations. So all of these have a bunch of different subcategories and helpful things in there. We're going to touch on a lot of these over the course of this semester, and you're going to get hands-on use, quote unquote, with these, or mouths-on use, right? Next palette is called the attributes palette. This affects what any object we draw actually looks like. So we have control over fill style, fill color, and opacity. The pen, or what's the line, you can think of it, style, color, opacity, thickness. And then things like markers. So beginning and end of a line or a polyline or something like that, we can control whether or not it has arrows or dots or things like that on it. And then there's even a drop shadow option. Over on this right-hand side, this first palette is called the Object Info palette. This is a really, really critical palette and a really helpful palette. Basically, any object that you have selected within Vectorworks can be manipulated through this Object Info palette. It provides information about selected objects within your drawing, allows you to quickly change and edit parameters for those objects. And this menu option will actually continuously repopulate with new options and new parameters based on the type of thing that you have selected. So really powerful and useful. It has 3 tabs. The first one is called Shape. It affects size, location, those specific parameters associated with different types of objects that I was just mentioning. Data references information associated with the object for use in worksheets. This has like an Excel-like worksheet thing. This also is where you edit some stuff called text records. And then the final tab is called Render, which affects the look of objects when you're doing renderings and presentations using this Vectorworks software. And the next palette here at the bottom is called the Navigation palette. Navigation provides access to classes, design layers, sheet layers, viewports, save views, and referenced files. These are all various organizational tools that we have at our disposal when we are drawing, and we'll go through what each of these things means and what they do as well. Up here at the top, which you just saw window shade down or like self-compress up and down, is another palette called the Resource Manager. So the Resource Manager allows access to and management of the various resources that are available for use in drawings. So these are things like hatches and symbols, gradients, textures, text formats, and a whole lot more. You can have subfolders, you can have a whole bunch of different things going on within it. And these are all things that are basically reusable over and over and over again within your document. So you'll find as we go through this semester that we're going to create a whole bunch of different symbols and different resources and stuff to use through this resource manager, because these are things that we're going to be continuously needing to use or revisit within a drawing. So it's helpful to have it as sort of like a one-click option instead of having to redo it over and over and over again. These resources are stored within your file specifically. You can create your own, like I was just talking about. Vectorworks also comes with a whole bunch of default libraries with a whole bunch of default symbols and different objects and things like that, all of which is searchable again through this top searchable field. It's just a huge, vast array of pre-built stuff that you can then also edit, or you can just kind of use as a guide as you're creating your own. If you're working on a version of Vectorworks prior to 2022, which is what I'm currently working in, you will also have another palette that you need to enable that's called snapping. If any of these palettes you aren't seeing in your workspace, you want to go to Window, Palettes, and then you want to make sure that they have a check mark next to them. So in this case, Object Info with Shape, Data, and Render turned on, Navigation with all of these turned on, Attributes, Resource Manager, Basic, and Toolsets. Snapping would be another option if you are in a previous version of Vectorworks, but since 2022 has come along, snapping is now down here all the way at the bottom in the status bar. And what snapping does is it provides a whole bunch of options for helping you to align precisely objects to objects, objects to other things within your drawing. And it provides a lot of other visual clues and smart options, again, to kind of help you just lay things out and align things properly. And we'll go through how to use that as we move forward as well. Next, we're going to be setting some Vectorworks and document settings and preferences to be the same. So to start with, we're going to go to Tools, Options, and Vectorworks Preferences. If you are on Mac, you can also go to Vectorworks at the top left of your screen and drop down that menu and select Preferences there. So all of these preferences, it really ultimately doesn't matter. It's up to your own personal tastes for how you like to work with the program. However, we're just going to set some defaults together so that way we're at least on the same page when we start. To turn things on and off, it's a simple checkbox. You click on and then you click off again in order to select on or select off. Out of the first tab, which is called Edit, again, if you're on Mac, it's across the top of your screen, but here on Windows, it's on the left-hand side. So under Edit, we're going to start with that tab. We want everything turned on this leftmost column, except for Enable Click Drag Drawing and Separate Sheet Views. We want these three to be off. We want 2D conversion resolution set to high, default compression to PNG, and always with a warning for this. And then all of our arrow key stuff you can just leave as the defaults. If you're ever curious what something does as you're playing with it, you can hover your mouse over top of the description and it'll actually populate along the very bottom of the window. You can see that little description. In this case, sets the default behavior of the mouse wheel and scroll bar. We're next going to go to display. We want everything turned on in this except for use dark background and show other objects while in editing modes. The dark background, if you're an AutoCAD user or if you've used that in the past, it turns your entire page black and it inverts the black and white elements of the drawing. If that is something that you're very used to, feel free to click it. Under display light objects, we want only in wireframe, and we only want to display 3D loci in wireframe as well. Under session, use sound. I personally have it turned off. The program will make beeps and things like that at you when you make some errors. It's annoying to me, so I have it off. Log time in program is if you're billing a client and you're doing this on the clock by the hour. You can literally log the amount of time that you have Vectorworks open for. You don't need to have that selected for now. One of the big other things to point out is the number of undos. So Vectorworks, you can set the limit of the maximum number of undos. So Control Z or Command Z, depending on what platform you're on. It is our recommendation that you keep this number particularly high. Every single nudge, every single change of a line, every single new object that you draw, that all counts as undo points. Especially when you start nudging things and dragging things around, it adds up really quickly. Every view change can also be a thing. So we want to make sure that where it says undo view changes, you have group all view changes selected. That'll make sure that anytime you do a series of view changes sequentially, it all groups it as one single undo instead of each individual step of that view change becoming its own individual undo point. So I have mine set to 75. Feel free to make yours higher or lower depending on your preferences. This is where enable palette docking as a selection option on Windows. You won't see that on Mac. You should enable the Vectorworks libraries and online content because they're super helpful for when you're doing stuff. Under check for updates, I check weekly. And under error reporting, I send nothing. That's how often you want to actually send app information to the developer. So if you want to send like crash detail reports and things like that, you can. I always send nothing. Under 3D, we will be doing 3D as a part of this class, so we want to go ahead and set this now too. We want 3D conversion resolution set to high, 3D view render mode set to wireframe, and view projection set to orthogonal. Autosave. Vectorworks can be pretty notorious for crashing and for freezing. At certain points, it's much better than it used to be, but it will still happen, and you don't want to lose all of that hard work that you've been doing. I highly suggest that you select the box that says autosave. I have mine set for every 5 minutes. I know some designers who have that set for every 2 minutes. It's basically how frequently you want Vectorworks to just autosave your work in the background. I do not click the box that says confirm before save because I don't want a dialog box to appear every 5 minutes saying, do you want to go ahead and back up your file now? I autosave a backup copy to the same backup folder as the location of the original file. If you wanted to keep every single backup you ever create in the exact same location, you could pick that. It's nice to keep it with the file that you're working with. And I personally keep the number of backups to save to 3. I wouldn't recommend going much higher than that. Definitely not higher than 5. It starts becoming kind of obnoxious at that point. I wouldn't go. 1 is fine. I like 3 because that gives me like a 15-minute stretch of time just in case. Under interactive, this is how basically certain objects will select and show up within Vectorworks when you're using your mouse on it. We want to have selected show selection box, show snap box, and show acquisition hits. Whatever the defaults are with your box size and snap box size, you should be able to leave that just fine. Have all the highlighting stuff turned on. And you don't really have to worry about animated view transitions, but if you find your computer slowing down, I would unclick that box. User folders, don't have to worry about anything here. Smart options displays. So when you are sitting with your mouse idle, and you can see that it just wanted to autosave on me. So if you're sitting with your mouse idle, at a certain point, you'll get these symbols around your mouse. This is that smart display options. So you can actually then take your mouse over and suddenly you have access to your basic tools, or you have access to your tool modes and things like that. So it's actually kind of a handy little add-on that they've been doing. So I've just left mine all default up at the top with the settings. Under display settings, I have view and draw tools, then tool modes, previous tools, so anything that's recent that you've clicked on, and then I have standard views, so that would be like front, side, rear, back. I don't use these much, but it's a quick way to, aside from hotkeys and the shortcut keys that I mentioned earlier, quick way to kind of access things that you're going to be using on a regular basis. And then quick search, we're going to leave default as well. And you say okay. Next, we want to look at some document settings. So we're going to go to File, Document Settings, and Document Preferences. So Vectorworks preferences are across Vectorworks anytime you're working with it. Document preferences are going to be specific to the document that you're working in. As a part of this, we're going to be saving a base file for ourselves. So these should then stay as your defaults moving forward off of that base file. However, we want to go ahead and set them now. We want the defaults under display. You should just be able to leave those as they are. Under dimensions, make sure that associate dimensions and auto associate dimensions are there. There's also this handy default option that's create dimensions in a class, and it automatically populates the dimension class that it starts you with. Under resolution, we want normal quality and then full resolution. On output, this is dots per inch. So that is the rendering resolution for when you are printing. I highly suggest that instead of 72, you bump that up to 150. Legacy 2D, leave it off, and plan shadows, leave as default. And say okay. Next, we're going to be setting the default line thicknesses that are available to us in the attributes palette. Line thicknesses are important when drafting because there are standards that we need to adhere to for what thickness of a line and what darkness of a line and things like that we need when we're drawing certain objects in relationship to other objects. We're going to go through those standards and those examples when we get to it this semester, but in the meantime, we're going to set ourselves up. So we're going to go into Tools, we're going to go to Options, and line thicknesses. Your list is going to look different. Vectorworks by default brings in what feels like some kind of arbitrary weird numbers. I'm sure there's a logic to it. It's all based in millimeters. It's based in real world measurements and the thicknesses of the actual lines when you go to print it. It just feels odd. You're going to see 0.05, 0.13, 0.18, some just kind of weird numbers here and there. We're just going to put these all basically into multiples of 5 and even numbers just so it's a little cleaner. So your number 1 line, you want to set to 0.05, your number 2 to 0.15, your number 3 to 0.2, your number 4 to 0.25, your number 5 to 0.35, your number 6 to 0.5, your number 7 to 0.7, number 8 to 1.0, number 9 to 1.5, and number 10 to 2.0. And when you're done, hit OK.